Welcome to my channel. Here I am with John Dryden's Alexander's Feast. Let's share some information about the context, the historical context of the poem, who was the poet, why is the title of the poem Alexander's Feast, and things like that. And then we would move on to the text of the poem. First, who was Alexander? Alexander was actually a Macedonian king who, at a very young age, decided to conquer the world, and he did that successfully. So, by the age of 20, he had almost all the world at his hand, all the known world, I mean. Uh, and one of the greatest enterprises Alexander could ever have was winning over Persia. There were two great empires at the time. Both of these empires had a great part of the earth under their command. One was the Greece Empire, the other one was the Persian Empire. Greece and Persian empires were all the time fighting over the borders, over different countries. Sometimes Persians attacked the borders of Greece, sometimes the Greek people attacked Persians. Anyway, Alexander was there in Persia to revenge for one of the attacks of the Persians. So the historical context of the poem is about the time where Greece Empire was really great and the Persian Empire was really the commander of the world, and they wanted to fight against one another all the time. And Alexander is there for the sake of the attack, the latest attack of the Persians. Uh, well, what has this topic to do with John Dryden? And who was John Dryden? John Dryden was a Restoration English poet, playwright, critic, and many other things. Uh, he started writing poetry at a time where England just came out of a civil war. And why do we call the period a Restoration period? Because the kingdom or the royalty or the monarchy was restored in England after a short period. For a while, England didn't have a king and it was controlled by the parliament, which is called the interregnum period. And after the interregnum period, the parliament wrote a letter to the prince, the former prince and now the king of England, and asked him to get back and take back monarchy. So John Dryden was writing at a time. What was the significance of that time? Uh, because of the Civil War and because of the interregnum period and the censorship and Posen literature, English literature somehow, as it was felt by Dryden and some of his peers, was lagging behind some other European literary forms and literature, like the French literature, Italian literature, and some other types of European or continental languages literature. So they wanted to give grace to English literature or to give grace back to a literature which had Shakespeare in it, which had Christopher Marlowe, Elizabethan drama, Beaumont Fletcher, many others in it. So Dryden, by writing about a great or significant kind of incident in the European history, wanted to share something with the history of the continent as a whole. And by writing that poem in English, he wanted to give that pride to the English language. So it was like marrying or like connecting the English language to something big in the European history and giving some graceful kind of impact on the audience. And about the genre of the poem, the genre of the poem is an ode. Odes were poems written to praise someone or something. They were originally started at the ancient Greek time, like the Greek culture. The athletes who won the Olympics had they like the pleasure of being the subject of a poem, and the poets wrote poems about them. There was a poet called Pindar. Pindar started the tradition, and then this eulogy or this euphoric genre started to be liked by some other European poets, and it is continued even today. So we can see that John Dryden is incorporating a kind of a difficult and regulated genre into English poetry by praising not only Alexander and what he did, but also Saint Cecilia. Uh, Briefly, Saint Cecilia was one of the first virgin martyrs of Christianity. She was forced to marry a pagan guy, and she was not satisfied with that. Anyway, she was martyred. But the point was that Saint Cecilia. It was said could listen to the music of God. She never talked, but she was listening to God inside her head, and later on, she was called to be the patron of music because she had the honor of listening to God's music. So, this was all about Saint Cecilia, the title of the poem, John Dryden, the historical context, and now it would be time for us to get to the text of the poem. So you can see the first stanza of the poem, and I have to add that the poem had a chorus, so some parts of it were repeated by the chorus. It was a performative form of a poem. Let's read. It was the royal feast for Persia one. It is the immediate moment after uh, Alexander's Alexander's defeating of Persia and winning over them by Philip's warlike son. Philip is King Philip, the king of Macedonia and the father of Alexander. Aloft in awful state. Awful here is not used negatively, it is used positively. It's really full of awe. He's somewhere up in the place in the room they are sitting aloft, and there is a hole. Maybe they are celebrating their victory. Aloft in awful state, the godlike hero sate on his imperial throne. His valiant peers were placed around, their brows with roses and with myrtles bound. It was a tradition at the time that the winners in a war used flowers and things like that to make a crown over their heads. So should desert in arms be crowned. And there is a parallel. While these winning soldiers are there with roses, the desert is full of arms and different forms of metals. The crown, there are two forms of crowns there. The lovely Thais by his side. Who is Thais? Thais is actually Alexander's mistress, sate like a blooming eastern bride, and flower of youth and beauty's pride. Happy, happy, happy pair! None but the brave, none but the brave, none but the brave deserves the fair. These four lines are actually part of the chorus of the poem, and they are repeated by a group of people. So this poem is actually written to be performed and to be sung. And here you can see the place which was won by Alexander. In Persian, it is called Takht Jamshid. In European languages, it is called Persepolis, meaning the city of Pars or Parse, because the city was called by the Achaemenid dynasty actually to be Parse. It was their capital. It was a great building. It was wonderful. You can see if you search, you can see different parts of it now kept in different museums in England and France and United States and in Iran. Actually, you can see some of the parts of the building, some of these columns and colonnades still there. So it was like a big kind of a city where the Persians were very proud of. It is now located, the remaining parts are now actually located in Shiraz, near Shiraz, one of the cities of Iran. Timotheus placed on high. Who is Timotheus? Timotheus is the musician there, and this artist is controlling the emotions of Alexander. So, Timotheus placed on high amid the tuneful choir, with flying fingers touched the lyre. The lyre is a kind of a instrument. The trembling notes ascend the sky and heaving joys inspire. The song began, and he starts singing alongside, like playing. The song began from Jove. Jove was Zeus is the god of gods, and we might know that he was highly interested in women, both in their godly state or in human state, who left his blissful seats above. Of course, for the sake of a woman, it was a customary thing he did all the time, such as the power of mighty love. A dragon's fire form belied the god, and all the time he was changing forms. Maybe he was afraid of his wife, or maybe for different reasons to beguile the person, he changed himself to another form. This time a dragon. Dragon's fire form belied the god. Sublime and radiant spires he rode, and he to fair Olympia pressed. Olympia was Alexander's mother. Here it is implied by the singer or by the musician that Alexander is not actually Philip's son, but he is the son of the god, or he has something like a demigod in him. And while his daughter's snowy breast, then round her slender waist the curled and stamped an image of himself as sovereign of the world. The listening crowd admired the lofty sound, present deity, and people there in that room are taken away by the music, and they are under the influence of the power of the music. They also come to agreement with him. A present deity, they shout around, a present deity. The vaulted roofs were bound. With ravished ears, the monarch hears. Alexander is like carried away. He also believes. The monarch hears Alexander, assumes the god. He even assumes that everything the poet is singing, everything this musician is singing is correct, affects to nod and seems to shake the spheres. It was said that the earthquakes come when the god moves his head. And here, Alexander feels so much like God, or feels so much God, that he moves his head, and he even feels that he can shake the earth. So, Dryden, all the time in this poem, is talking about the power and influence in music on people. And though Alexander is the king of the world, now he's the winner over Persia, but such a powerful king, monarch, is still under the command of the artist. And don't forget that England at the time came out of civil war, and there was a battle over who's the king, who's the monarch, who was to replace whom. And it is exactly at this time that Dryden is trying to prove the power of the artist, or whether he's a musician or a poet or both of them. And again, we can see another image of Persia. Let me spoil part of the story so that you may know, or you have already checked it. Tahta Jamshid or Persepolis was actually burnt by Alexander. So we don't know what exactly it's looked like, but by the use of the historical records, imagination, and AI, some pictures are made, like this one. Then the theme of the music changes. The praise of Bacchus, then the sweet musician song. Bacchus, or Dionysus, was the god of wine, the god of ecstasy. Uh, so Timotheus is searching for another effect. He gave utmost power to Alexander, and now he is trying to change his feelings. If Bacchus ever fair and ever young, the jolly god and triumph comes. So they are going to drink wine, sound the trumpets, beat the drums, and he changes the instrument like trumpets, drums. He's going to give him a hilarious kind of pride because of his victory. Flushed with purple grace, the color of wine, he shows his honest face. Now give the hot boys breath. Hot boys are another instruments. He comes, Bacchus ever fair and young. So Alexander is getting drunk, drunken joys that first ordain. Bacchus' blessings are a treasure. Drunken is the soldier's pleasure. Rich the treasure, sweet the pleasure, sweet is pleasure after pain. So let's check out the effect, but beforehand, another picture of Persepolis. Soothed with the sound, the king grew vain. So he starts to get hallucinated, fought all his battles over again. And thrice he routed all his foes, and thrice he slew the slain. The master saw the madness rise, the master musician, the master saw the madness rise, his glowing cheeks, his ardent eyes. And while he heaven and earth defied, changed his hand and checked his pride. In this line, two his are used. The first one refers to the hand of the musician. The second one is referring to the pride of Alexander, who chose a mournful muse, soft pity to infuse. Her song Darius, great and good. Darius or Dariush was the Persian king who was defeated by Alexander by too severe a fate. Fallen, 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 fallen. These fallen, 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 fallens are a reference both to Darius and his fall, and also the fall of the music, then the falling of the mood of Alexander from the high or highly stated king of the world to a fallen kind of emotional state, fallen from his high estate, and weltering on his blood as Darius. And Alexander is now thinking of Darius, deserted at the utmost need by those his former benefit, on his bare earth exposed he lies, on the bare earth exposed he lies, but not a friend to close his eyes. Darius was actually killed by his own peers, by other Persian army men, because of his lack of efficiency um, in checking Alexander and controlling his powers. With downcast looks, the joyless victor sate was sitting, revolving in his altered soul the various turns of chance below, and now and then a sigh he stole, and tears began to flow. Now he's pitying his enemy. You can see another image of the Achaemenid like power and Persepolis. The mighty master smiled to see that love was in the next degree. Now, the musician is doing something else. He's going to raise the emotions of love and Alexander. It was but a kindred sound to move, for pity melts the mind to love. Softly sweet in Lydian measures, soon he soothed his soul to pleasure. So he makes the music calm and romantic. War has sung us toil and trouble, honor, but an empty bauble, never ending, still beginning, fighting still and still destroying. If the world be worth thy winning, think, oh, think it worth enjoying. Lovely Science sits beside thee, take the good the gods provide thee, forget about war, just take love. The many rend the skies with loud applause. So love was crowned, but music won the cause. The prince, unable to conceal his pain, gazed on the fair who caused his care, and sighed and looked, sighed and looked, sighed and looked, and sighed again. At length, with love and wine at once suppressed, the vanquished victor sunk upon her breast. Vanquished victor, here is an example of oxymoron, or when we have two opposite words side by side one another. Vanquished means defeated, victor means the winner. So the defeated winner, Alexander, he's the winner over Persia, but he's defeated by the power of music, sunk upon her breast. Now strike the golden lyre again, and louder yet, and yet a louder strain. Break his bands of sleep asunder, and rouse him like a rattling peal of thunder. Hark, hark! The horrid sound has raised up his head. As awaked from the dead, in amaze, he stirs around. Alexander is just like getting up from his sleepy mood. Revenge! Revenge! Timotheus cries. See the furious arise. In the historical records, it is written that it was Thias who, uh, like, enticed or tempted Alexander to set fire in Persia. But in this poem, Dryden claims that it was not Thias, actually, it was the musician, the artist. And the Furies were the gods of revenge. See the snakes that they rear, and how they hiss in their hair, and the sparkles that flash from their eyes. Behold a ghastly band, a band made out of ghosts, each a torch in his hand. These are the ghosts of the soldiers being slain by the Persians in their former attack on Greece. And here you can see the place where Cyrus, the great Persian king, is buried. The place is still there. This kind of structure is still there, and it is located near Takht Jamshid or Parsa, and also the modern day city of Shiraz in Iran. Those are Grecian ghosts that in battle were slain, and unburied remain, inglorious on the plain. What was the problem? If the Greek people could not bury their dead people, they could not, and those ghosts could not actually go to the underworld, so their ghosts were just here and there, everywhere, but not in their proper place. Give the vengeance due to the valiant crew. Behold how they toss their torches on high, how they point to the Persian abodes in glittering temples of their hostile gods. The hostile gods refers to the different religion of the Persians. The Persians were the followers of the prophet called Zoroaster or Zarathustra, and they were actually his followers. He was a highly influential prophet, and he has his own commandments and maxims and books. And anyway, their gods, they Zoroastrian gods were different from the Greek gods, so they're hostile gods. They had a different religion. The princes applaud with a furious joy, and the king seized the flambeau, a torch with zeal to destroy. This led the way to light him to his prey, and like another Helen, fired another Troy. We started with Zeus in his interference on earth, and then we end with the offspring, Helen, now Thias, and what happened to another big city in real life. Fired another Troy. So metaphorically, Dryden is talking about Cyrus in Persia and Persepolis. And so Persepolis was set on fire. Thus long ago, ear heaving bellows learned to blow, while organs yet were mute, because Cecilia brought these musical instruments, but at the time Timotheus had no hand in them. Timotheus, to his breathing flute and sound lyre, could swell the soul to rage or kindle soft desire. At last divine Cecilia came, inventress of the vocal frame. The sweet enthusiast from her sacred store enlarged the former narrow bounds and added length to solemn sounds. Let nature's mother-written arts unknown before, let old Timotheus yield the prize, so the prize of the day of music may go to Timotheus. Let old Timotheus yield the prize, or both divide the crown, Cecilia and Timotheus. He, Timotheus, He raised a mortal to the skies, meaning Alexander. She drew an angel down in the different forms of music or the saint. So this was the poem, and thank you very much for listening.